Hey all, I'm just jumping on a little early so everybody can kind of gather that wants to gather live. I'd love to see your comments in the chat. I hope I can see them. If I'm not seeing them live, I'll definitely get back to you. And you can always send me a text because I think that'll pop up. But how is everybody doing from the last experiment? I've gotten most of the comments from the coat hanger experiment. Hey, Tamika. So those are most of the comments. And last week, we were asked to look at, pick something and focus on what we want. This is when we got to be specific with our request for money, dinner out, whatever it was. And I'd like us to all keep in mind something that Tasha Chen told me, and it really resonated. It's like, yeah, this is true. Money comes in even if we don't accept it. So that could be in the form of, a low interest credit card or a loan that you're coming in, or somebody offers you a ride somewhere and you just don't accept it. You're not going there or whatever. So whatever you're offered, whether you accept it or not, is an answer. Another thing that we want to think about too is money's just always moving, right? So this isn't all about money. This is just this E2, book E2 is E squared, sorry, is about noticing everything, how much power we actually do have in our lives, how much control we actually have in our lives. And one of the reasons that we're not getting what we want may have something to do with how much we believe we deserve. And so that's something I'm going to be addressing at the end of this. However, today is our discussion about experiment number 5. And I'm really excited to get into this one too, because it's another experiment. And I'm just going to go ahead and get rolling because it's the top of the hour. Experiment number 5. We're reading from Pam Grout's E squared. This experiment is called the Dear Abby principle. Your connection to the field provides accurate and unlimited guidance. I have often wished that when struggling with a decision or dilemma, that the clouds would part and a cosmic Charlton Heston type voice would invite us to the 2nd floor, where the librarian of life would sit with us for several hours, patiently answering all our questions and giving direction. Harriet Ann Closser, author of Write It Down, Make It Happen. So the premise of this experiment: inner guidance is constantly available. There's never a time, never has been, never will be, when you can't get inner assistance for anything. Relying on any other decision-making tool is asking for trouble. The monkey mind, a Buddhist term for the distractible rattle, buzz, what should I do, was never designed to solve problems. Yet that's where most of us get our guidance. From the left cerebral hemisphere, that's prone to misjudgment, faulty interpretations, and major fabrications. The conscious mind was designed for just 2 things: to identify the problem and formulate goals. Anyone harnessing the mind properly would use it to define a problem or set an intention and then quickly jump back, Jack. That's it. That's all the cerebral cortex is good for, planting seeds. But instead, the conscious mind decides to get involved, to weigh the pros and cons, to come to rational decisions, Gut feelings be damned. No sooner does the conscious mind define the problem or set the intention than it begins to yammer, be on and on about how big the problem is and why it's not likely to get solved anytime soon and how that intention sounds cool, but geez, I've been there, done that, and sure as heck didn't pan out last time. Suffice it to say, this spin doctor in the brain is not your best resource. It judges, distorts reality, and causes unnecessary emotional distress. So let's say Jane uses her conscious mind to create the intention of improving her relationship with her husband. Perfect, great job. Except that instead of pulling back and letting the intention flower, instead of temporarily shelving the conscious mind and turning to a source that could really offer assistance, Jane's conscious mind begins creating rational conclusions, begins considering options. Before long, it's screaming, "Don't get me started." And from there, the cacophony of voices begins to sound as discordant as a band of rock star wannabes jamming in their parents' garage. My relationship with my husband is a charade, excuse me. My husband is needy and lazy. I'll never get what I want. In other words, the conscious mind starts interpreting. The problem is it can't see past its nose or past the preordained decisions it made before it was old enough to know better. So way back when we were being programmed between the ages of 0 and 7, when some monks said that, give me a child until they're age 7 and I'll show you what they're going to be as a man. The results can be messy, capricious, and cruel. A better solution is to use those fingernail clippers for what they're designed for. Put them back in the medicine cabinet and get out a tool that's better equipped for mowing the lawn, inner guidance. So you use your thinking brain to come up with a goal and then rely on inner guidance. Once you get the hang of it, you'll find it's extremely reliable. Plus, its answers are far more peaceful, instinctive, and responsive to all the unpredictable factors that the conscious mind can't begin to understand. Inner guidance comes in many packages. I have no idea what the source of my inner voice is. I certainly do not believe it is the voice of Jesus Christ, or a dead ancestor with a quavery Irish brogue, or a high-ranking Pleiadian sending me psychic data packets from a spaceship, although that last notion would be especially fun. D. Patrick Miller, founder of Fearless Books. Sometimes inner guidance comes completely unbidden. Like the night I fretted about my newborn daughter's 106-degree temperature, I was pacing the floor. Frantic, worried. It was around 3 a.m. And while my friends always say, call me anytime, day or night, and probably even mean it, I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I walked and paced. And suddenly a voice, suddenly a voice of startling clarity surfaced in my mind. It said, I didn't give you this great gift just to take it away. And I knew in that moment all would be well. My friend Arlene had what at the time seemed to be a rather foolish vision. She felt guided to apply for a music director position in her church in North Carolina. Sounded good, except for one small detail. She had absolutely no musical training and could only play the sax badly. Sure, she loved to sing, but loving to sing and getting a team of musicians to play instruments and singers to create harmony are two different record albums. Her conscious mind started its spin doctoring. Darlene, you're just plumb nuts. Why would God or anyone else want you to lead a music team? But she agreed to give it one last shot. She made the following bargain with her inner guidance. If you really want me to lead the music team, have me run into either the minister, the board president, or the pianist by the end of the day. Since it was Monday and church was already sealed and delivered for that week, she figured she was safe. After all, she worked all day, and the odds of running into any one of those three people in her neighborhood were next to zilch. On the way home from work, she stopped for groceries. She walked into the checkout line when she heard a voice. Yoo-hoo, Darlene, what are you doing here? It wasn't the ethereal voice from the deep, like the reassuring voice that comforted me at 3 a.m. It was the voice of Mary Jenkins, board president, who was waiting in line ahead of Darlene. So those are the things we look for. So we put our inner guidance on the no-call list. One of the main functions of formalized religions is to protect people against a direct experience of God. Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist. Unfortunately, most of us have a restricted guidance we'll let in. We've decided that neon signs, telegrams, and sealed letters from God are okay, but everything else is, well, just a bit too frightening. We'd be scared witless if a scroll unrolled in front of us or an ascended master stepped up in front of the TV during an episode of Mad Men. So it has to be challenging for our inner guidance. How would you feel if someone asked you a question, then turned his or her back, ignoring everything you said? We're like 5-year-olds with our fingers in their ears going, la, 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 la. You wouldn't just pick up your phone when it rings and start talking loudly. You'd say hello and listen. When Neil Donald Walsh first sat down with a pen in his hand and some tough questions in his heart, he was shell-shocked when a voice he presumed to be God answered back. Do you really want the answers, or are you just ranting? Walsh, who somewhat hesitantly agreed to play along, said, well, both. And if you've got answers, I'd love to hear them. And that's when he wrote his book, right? Conversations with God. Anecdotal evidence. No matter how much evidence you have over time, you tend to block out experiences that aren't normal. Martha Beck, O Magazine columnist. Michael Beckwith, the guy I mentioned earlier who had a vision of a scroll, was looking up at a windmill one day. This was before he became a minister, when he wasn't completely convinced that his decision to pursue a godly calling was the right one. He said point blank, look, God, if you're listening, if this is what you want me really want for me, have that windmill point in my direction. Even though it was a windy day and the windmill was spinning very fast in the other direction, no sooner did he say that than the windmill stopped rotating on its normal axis and pointed directly at him. Of course, he'd already had one or two mind-blowing experiences. To put himself through school, this was back when he wanted to be a doctor, Beckwith sold drugs just to his friends, of course. And since he was a gregarious, open kind of guy, let's just say his business flourished. His marijuana dealership grew on both coasts and convinced him that if he played his cards right, he could retire completely by age 24. He knew something was off. His inner guidance kept prodding, giving him bizarre dreams, strongly suggesting there had to be a better way. He decided to give on his own to give up drugs and to follow the better way. He told his friends that it was over. He was retiring. On his final drug deal, he was busted by federal agents. Mind you, he had in his possession not only 100 pounds of pot, but he also had large sums of cash, guns, and hot cameras. And still his inner voice told him, everything is going to be okay. As he prepared for his trial, his friends thought he was crazy. Why aren't you fretting, pacing the floor? I was guilty, he says, but I was also assured by God that everything was going to be okay. By that time, he'd seen a grander vision. And sure enough, he got off on a technicality. When the judge freed him with a comment that he never wanted to see him again, Michael knew he never would. Sometimes the field of infinite possibility even manages to get through to people who scoff at it. In 1975, Gerald Jablowski, at the time a successful California psychiatrist on the outside, was falling apart on the inside. His 20-year marriage had ended. He was drinking heavily. He developed chronic disabling back pain, and of course, never dawned on him to seek higher guidance. As he said, I was the last person to be interested in the thought system that used words like God and love. But nonetheless, when he first saw A Course in Miracles, the book I've mentioned a few times, that teaches personal transformation by choosing love rather than fear, he heard a voice clearly tell him, physician, heal thyself. This is your way home. Jablonski has gone on to write many books. His lectures he lectures widely on the principles of Course in Miracles. And he even started a center in Sausalito, California. So immediate direct guidance is available 24/7. But instead of paying attention, we've taught ourselves not to listen. More anecdotal evidence. If only God would give me a clear sign, like making a large deposit in my name in a Swiss bank. Woody Allen, American filmmaker. When she was 25, actress Jamie Lee Curtis was hanging out in her recently purchased Los Angeles apartment with her friend Deborah Hill. Deborah, who had produced Halloween, the spooky movie that launched Curtis's career, had brought over a current magazine of Rolling Stone, a current issue of Rolling Stone magazine as a housewarming gift, and they were flipping through it and talking about Jamie Lee's recently ended relationship. And she pointed at a man who was wearing a plaid shirt and a waggish smirk. I'm going to marry that man. She'd never seen him before. She had no idea who he was. But something inside her told her he's the one. That's Christopher Guest, Deborah said. He's in a funny new movie called This Is Spinal Tap. I know his agent. Several months later, while at Hugo's, a popular West Hollywood restaurant, Jamie Lee glanced up to find herself staring straight at the guy from the magazine, who was only 3 tables away. He waved back as if to say, I'm the guy you called, because she'd called him and he had never answered. And she waved back. She thought, interesting. Except a few minutes later, he got up to leave. He shrugged, waved, and walked out the door. And Jamie Lee was kicking herself for believing in something as stupid as inner guidance. But the next day, her phone rang. It was Chris Guest, and he wanted to set up a date. 4 days later, at Chianti Ristorante on Melrose, they met for dinner. By the time Guest left for New York to tape an episode of Saturday Night Live, just 1 month later, they'd fallen deeply and passionately in love. They were married on December 18th, 1984, 8 months after Jamie Lee Curtis got initial guidance. So who is ready to find out what we're going to do with this one? The method. Parting the Red Sea and turning water to blood, the burning bush, nothing like that is going on now. not even in New York City. Michael Crichton, author of Jurassic Park. In this experiment, we'll prove that guidance received by Jamie Lee Curtis and others is not some weird Twilight Zone-like anomaly, but a very real and ongoing tool that all of us can use anytime. You'll spend 48 hours, or until I see you on Thursday, expecting a specific concrete answer to a specific concrete question. It can be as simple as whether to adopt a new Siamese kitten, or as complicated as whether or not to take a job. Either way, give your inner guidance 48 hours and spell it out. So you want to give it a distinct end. You want to say either in 48 hours or pick Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, right? I want to know by then, and write it down. But watch out. I tried this once and got fired. In retrospect, however, it was the perfect answer. Maybe the only one I could hear to the question I'd asked, is it time to launch my freelance writing career? So choose an issue that is troubling you, something that has a yes or no answer, something on which you've really been confused and don't know what to do. I know you're thinking of something right now. It doesn't matter what. That issue will work. Look at your watch. Ask for a clear, non-debatable answer and ask for it to show up within 48 hours. It might show up immediately. It might take only a day. But within 48 hours, expect to have a neon sign answer. It's your job to set the intention and the time frame. The FP will do the rest. So here we go, our lab report sheet. And if you go to the link in the notes of this, you'll be able to get this lab report sheet if you haven't signed up for them already. The lab report sheet, the principle, the Dear Abby principle. The theory, your connection to the field provides accurate and unlimited guidance. Is it really possible to get ongoing, immediate guidance? That's the question. The hypothesis, if I ask for guidance, I will get a clear answer to the following yes/no question. Write it down. Time required, 48 hours. Put today's date in the line and the time that you're hearing this. And then 48 hours from now, put the deadline for receiving that answer. So write that down as well. The approach. All right, here it goes. Okay, inner guidance. I may need to know the answer to this. Oh, excuse me. That's not right. Okay, inner guidance. I need to know the answer to this question. You've got 48 hours. Make it snappy. And then you write your research notes. What happened, how it happened, all that. And how it feels, right? And how this is going to change everything. Man, surrounded by facts, permitting himself no surprise, no intuitive flash, no great hypothesis, no risk, is in a locked cell. Ignorance cannot seal the mind more securely. Albert Einstein, German theoretical physicist. So savvy travelers, you have your homework assignment. Let's make it fun. Play with this. You are more powerful than you ever imagined. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.